Hi, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Jacqueline.
And I'm your host, Nicole. You're listening to the second season of Perfictionist.
Welcome back to yet another episode of Books and Bevvies. This is a series where we talk about books and things we've been reading that are on our minds while we enjoy some delicious libation. Today we're talking about small town settings, and in honor of that, I've got some sweet tea.
Ah, yes. That is like such an iconic small town drink.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I dipped into some lemonade because, I don't know, I think of like in the summer, kids selling lemonades at their little stands. And that reminds me of small towns.
And it's charming.
It's so charming.
Speaking of charming, regarding a small town setting, there is very much a charm versus reality situation happening.
They tend to have this kind of like, I don't know, mystery around them,
Yeah.
or like this like idolization.
There is always some kind of like undercurrent happening.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there?
It's not just like a story set in a small town. It's a story set in a small town where something either creepy is going on,
yeah,
or something kind of like whimsical is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
It's like you can't have it any like it's one or the other.
Yeah,
you need to pick a side.
Seems that way, honestly. I feel quite often in these small town settings, you have a character, and it's never a main character. It's always like a side character, and it's usually a woman, and she's usually like, I want to say like larger, but she also has like this very robust personality, and she's almost like the glue that keeps the community together.
Yes. I like instantly was picturing from we read it last summer.
What, The Great Alone?
The Great Alone. Is it is her name Marge?
I want to say it's Marge. Yeah.
The lady who runs the store.
Yes.
In the local town.
Yeah.
Who like helps out the main characters.
She's like a staple character.
Yeah.
And I feel like her character, that type of character, is very much, I almost want to say a trope in small towns, books set in small towns. Mm-hmm. There is almost always like a very fierce sort of mother of the community.
And I feel like that's especially so when you are looking at the more kind of darker, more serious tone small town settings, because you kind of have, like we said, those two sides where it's like a kind of more intense story that's kind of more character driven, or there's the lighter, fluffier small town stories that is more about like the vibes of the community and like idolizing the small town setting. And I feel like that character you're just talking about really fits into that first, more seriously toned book.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do find that those ones that are the more serious tones, those books, they definitely seem more realistic. And I mean, that's obvious. But I think there's like a lot of maybe sort of ugly realities we like to sort of turn away from, especially when you're relaxing. You just want to open a good book and relax. But with those particular settings in those small towns, you almost address them head on.
Yeah, it's like a much more nuanced version of a small town in the sense that like you're getting into something real. And I think those books often will have you question certain aspects of like, I guess maybe certain stereotypes that you've had. Because like books about small towns can really play into stereotypes, but then they can also really have you challenge ideas about stereotypes around small towns.
Totally. In a book I read a while ago, and I know I've mentioned it in previous episodes, The Creek Don't Rise, that one that has like multiple points of view. That one is set in Appalachia. So, and I know, like, you know, if you know about Appalachia, it's like kind of already that setting is kind of creepy already, because there's all of those like legends that surround that area, you know, like don't whistle at night and stuff like that, right? Like if you heard your name, no, you didn't kind of thing, right?
No, you didn't.
Yeah. And I would like to investigate that more because that's really interesting.
Yes.
But like, because that, I want to say, it's not even really a town, it's more of like a community, is so isolated. It makes, because it's so isolated, they almost have like their own little microculture within that community, which I think is like a really interesting and fun thing. Probably, I'm making assumptions here about like for the author to explore and like expand on that creatively.
Yeah, I ended up reading that book after you were talking about it. It sounded very interesting. And yeah, I really enjoyed how that book in particular kind of flips the script a little bit. A lot. And
Yeah.
especially with like the character of the teacher who's like the outsider. Because like oftentimes, again, like you said, you have that character who's like the mother hen. You also can often have characters that are like the outsider because you're getting that outsider perspective. And I think the outsider perspective, sorry, I'm like kind of like saying it funny for like air quote emphasis, is like done differently in this book. Because instead of seeing it like, oh, small town, they're, you know, think like backwards. I know that's like a very negative term, and I'm not saying that. I'm like, it's saying it in the sense that it's like oftentimes it'll be like, oh, so small town, they think in like a backwards kind of fashion.
I think everyone knows
about
that.
I just don't want to offend anyone, but with this particular story, the outsider actually gives like that perspective, like maybe we can learn something from having a different point of view versus coming in and being like, oh, this all needs to change, you're doing everything wrong.
Yeah, she was a really interesting character. I found her to be extremely compassionate, very intelligent, and just like what you just said, I think there was a strength in her character that probably a lot of even people in real life maybe don't have. And like she was eager for the opportunity, like you said, to learn. So that's kind of, it's cool in a way because she's sort of respecting what they've got going on there already. But yet she's still such an outsider, right? And yeah, quite often, like with these small town setting books, the main character herself will be an outsider. And I think especially like when you start getting into these really like different, I want to say, like rural communities where things are like, oh, they're almost so isolated that things are odd. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe they even have their own dialect kind of thing. And I think probably seeing it through the perspective of an outsider gives the readers some relatability going on in the book. Otherwise, it's just too weird and you can't relate, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably like why that character is being used, or how that character is being used in many stories, is that relatability piece. But then like to take it and be like, oh, maybe we, instead of taking our ideas and projecting that onto the culture that we're kind of being introduced to, it's like, let's be open to what we can learn from people who maybe look a little odd and seem a little strange at first. I mean, like some of the things that happen in the story are not condoning them. But
it's an interesting like kind of thing to think about. Because like, you know, some practices are maybe not so cool.
Critical lens is still appropriate.
But overall, and you know, like again, like going into these communities, sometimes you have like this vibe of like there's a big secret in this maybe the whole community is keeping the secret, maybe it's just like well known that one person has a big secret, right? And like the scandals that are maybe not necessarily known about or are known about but you just don't talk about it kind of thing.
That is like such a huge piece of small town settings. It's like, you know how when we talked about like our romance, in our romance episode, how we talked about like, you're like, I like romances because I know I can be guaranteed a happy ending. it's like that with these small town settings, but it's like I can be guaranteed there's going to be some sort of mystery
there's
or some sort of
some
secretive
underlying thing happening here.
Yeah. And it's like I can just rely that is going to be a part of the story.
Yeah. I remember reading a book once where and it was such a good story, but it like really wasn't about too much. But the writing was so good, and it was a small town setting. And again, it was a teacher who was the main character. Quite often they're teachers that are like needed in these rural settings, right? And she just like, I don't know, it was just like the story of like how she was helping her students, and then, you know, sometimes there were like issues going on at home and stuff. But the way that the author did it, it was so like well thought out and also sensitive to like the situation in general.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like maybe there's a kid who comes from an abusive household, but he's got like this incredible like intellectual mind, and he could go so far if only given the right resources and stuff like that. And so then you'll have stuff like that too, where like the tension is hugely between the protagonist and maybe like the parents of a child, or like some kind of like barrier that's keeping whoever she's trying to help like from moving forward.
And there always seems to be that element of like family, like community, and like it could be a more traditional family, or like in the example where you're like, oh, it could be like the family against like the teacher kind of thing or whatever. But there always does seem to be some sort of element of like family, be it like biological family or found family, or that seems to be a big part of it. It's like tropes. It's like you can find these, there's so much emphasis and focus on like romance tropes, but it's like you can find them in all types of genres. If you like you read enough, you're like, oh, okay, it has this and it has this and it has this.
I mean, there are elements that work in storytelling, right? And so it makes sense that they're used again and again, but it's just really interesting to see the different ways in which they're used and if it's effective in that setting.
Well, yeah, because like it might not work. Like just because it works, it doesn't mean it's always going to work. And a lot of that could be like the environment, the setting. Like, does this make sense? With
even
the
personality of the given characters. Like, yeah, I find it super interesting. Talking more about like the setting and stuff, the town is quite often, or the community, because sometimes it's so small, it's not even a town, it's just a community or a village or something smaller. And quite often that ends up feeling like a character in itself. Like I know we had discussed in The Grade Alone that the wild, like the setting seemed like its own character because it was so volatile, but also on the flip side provided so much solace for the main character Lenny. And another example is in If the Creek Don't Rise. Like there's just like, because of the numerous points of view, the whole community itself felt again almost like its own character, because aside from the teacher's point of view in that, like the outsider's point of view, everyone else we heard from was from that community. So you really get like a good sense of what that community is about, and like how each character affects like the overall vibe in the community.
Yeah. Well, and how like the community itself is sort of like, there's like an established kind of normalcy within the community, and that normalcy exists because that community exists, and because they are so rural. And if they weren't so rural, then maybe, you know, it would be different. Like it's the
well,
physical
it would definitely
setting
be different. It's like a little microculture, right?
I found something very similar in Credence, where it's like the physical environment, if it didn't exist in the way it does, then the story itself would not be able to move forward. Like the main characters are essentially trapped in a house for several months because they live so far up a mountain. When the snow hits, they can't leave their property for months. So the events that then take place within that house over the course of the winter season, if they had not been trapped in that house, those events never would have taken place.
So it's how like did you find that compared though to The Grade Alone when the winter hits and then they're more isolated? Was it similar?
I feel like with The Grade Alone, like they're so completely different stories. But I mean, in a way, it is similar because it's like all about like how people's minds work. Like it's very psychological in both stories, even though they're very, very different stories.
Yes.
It comes down to psychology and human psychology.
Yeah, that's
And
so interesting.
sort of the past and how people's past influences their current behavior, and then the set, like put in an isolated setting, how that then comes out and how that behavior is sort of portrayed.
Oh, that's super interesting. Yeah, because when you think about, I'm sure everybody during the pandemic learned a lot about the effects of isolation on our own psychology and how it can be really difficult and more difficult for certain personalities than others.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're put into like the setting you just mentioned, where they're basically like, it's almost like they've been put inside a pressure canner
Mm-hmm.
and the pressure's just turning up and like it's inescapable.
Yeah. And it's like, how are you going to react?
Mm-hmm.
What behaviors are going to come out of that? If you ever feel the need to read Credence, or if you ever do read Credence, I would love to like have a full-on discussion, because I feel like there's so much psychology behind that book that people
Ooh.
just like pass over because of the intimate scenes within the book and how graphic they are, and
Right.
how kind of on the fringes they are.
Oh, shoot. So it's almost like it kind of gets like, yeah, it's smutty. Is that what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying? And people like it's just a smut book, but it's not. There's like all this psychology in it as well.
Yeah, it's like a dark romance, and I think
Oh.
that overshadows the fact that like there's a lot of psychology behind why these like why people do things. That is,
Yeah.
it is psychology. So it's like,
Yeah.
that is missed. It's like, why are they behaving this way? And it's like there are reasons, and you can see why.
Well, I have it on my Kindle, so I should just read it, and then we can talk about it.
I was fascinated by it. I thought it was so thought-provoking, and not for the reasons that it's generally discussed.
Oh, yeah, I would love. Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad that we talked about that, because now I'm going to go into it with this fresh perspective in my mind, and it'll help me pay closer attention to like the non intimate scenes.
Yeah. And I think because you're also someone who is very interested in psychology and has done a lot of research and reading about psychology, like I think you'll be able to pick up on it.
Okay. Cool.
So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it now. I didn't realize it had that aspect in it. So that's cool.
Oh, I feel like small town setting books, books set in a small town, are kind of beloved. Like people tend to like really, really enjoy them. And I think that might come down to the fact that there is a small town setting book for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like, if you're looking for something that's like super deep and super meaningful, you can find that.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for something that is just kind of like a little wackadoo, a little out there, a whole bunch of cheese, if you just want like an entire cheese pizza,
a cheese platter,
like a charcuterie of just cheese, then you also should like look up small town romance. Like that is where you're going to find that. So I think it's like these books tend to resonate with so many people because there is such a vast, I don't know, smorgasbord of different things you can get from them.
But I also think, and I kind of felt this acutely today, but I also think that, like, you know, because people really crave connection. That is literally just like hardwired within us as a species. Like, we can't escape that. We crave connection, meaningful connection. And in these small town like settings, there's a lot of meaningful connection happening. And quite often, like, I don't think I've read a small town setting book where there wasn't meaningful connection happening between people. And I think that, like, when you're in a big city, you can also feel so lonely because everybody's just kind of hustling and doing their own thing. And like, how lonely is it to be surrounded by people but feel so unseen and unheard? But when you're in a small community, it seems like everybody's just so aware of everything that's going on. Even the hermit is like, people are checking in on him. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so much more connected. And I think that's probably why it helps, or why it resonates with so many people, even if you are not someone who would enjoy living in a small town. That, like, sense of connection, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% hitting the nail on the head. Every single, like, it doesn't matter what kind of aspect of small town books you like if you like the more serious ones or if you really like the like super sweet, tend to be oddly like holiday themed ones.
Yes.
They all have that connection piece. Regardless of anything else going on in the story, they do always have that connection piece. But like, what is up with that holiday? Like, why are they always holiday themed? Like, why are the super cheesy ones like always like either Halloween or Christmas or like, you know, not necessarily Halloween, but like fall vibes?
I guess because like immediately it being around pumpkin spice season or Christmas season or like the holiday season, Yulemas.
Yeah.
I guess it could be kind of like it automatically feels good because you know going into it like this is a good like, you know.
Yeah, it's like a built-in this is cozy.
Yes, exactly.
It's like you want a cozy book? Oh, it happens in the holidays.
Yes, exactly. Right. Like how messed up would it be to grab a book that like has a clear winter theme on it, like a cabin covered in snow with like, I'm actually describing a cover that my friend shot and it's used on a Nora Roberts cover. And it's like a cabin with like a Christmas tree and it's like all snowy and it's like very idyllic looking.
Yeah, just so beautiful.
Just how twisted would it be though to grab that and it be something like Haunting Adeline or Satan's Affair?
Yeah.
Like you'd be like, oh, what I've been violated. Like,
but that being said, there's like this new trend of taking these like super spicy like romance books that typically would have this like Fabio on the front and this girl like latching onto him with his shirt torn open.
Like the completely like classic romance
cover. It's like you know what you're getting into and they're now swapping those out for these cutesy little titles and I'm like, if I pick up this book, I'm thinking it's going to be like, oh, we kissed.
Oh my
and gosh. It's like, nope.
Whoa.
I can't even say what we did.
I actually appreciate that they've done that because if I'm reading one of those, I don't want people to know that. Like, do you know what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. And I agree because when you like, even if I'm on my Kindle reading a spicy book in public, I'm like, no.
Is there a privacy screen I can buy for this?
So I 100% agree that having a cutesy title makes it easier to read out and about in the world.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some sort of system. Like, I'm just like, I feel like one day some person is going to pick up a book thinking it's just this innocent closed door romance and they're just going to be like it sent to an early grave. Like the dark romance they didn't sign up for.
So what I just described to you is already happening. Oh, that's so funny. I've been wondering about these covers that are coming out. They're very like 2D, you know, like they're very 2D, very modern looking. Are these what you're talking about? Like kind of not cartoonish, but like it's like clip art almost.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea. I have bypassed those. I'm like, oh, that is too cutesy looking for me. Like,
yeah, and I think it's
there I am judging a book, many books literally by their cover.
Yeah.
Wow. Shame on myself.
Through the streets with you. No. But I don't know. I'm just like very much like, I just feel for the person who like didn't sign up for that, but is going to accidentally grab it because the cover looks adorable.
They're going to like, oh my God, it will be like Haunting Adeline. It'll be like discovering a dark part within yourself. Yeah. Be like, I did not sign up for this, but actually kind of like it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that will happen. It's like, good for you.
The Adeline effect, or like, what's his name? Is his name Zaid? The Zaid effect? Yeah. Do you see people on TikTok are calling him Zaddy?
Zaddy? Oh, like Zay Daddy?
Yeah.
Zaddy.
You got it immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fun.
I got it.
It's just so funny.
Putting words together? Yeah, I'll get it.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like that's like a millennial thing.
Yeah.
Like the Benefers.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense, right?
It's just our genre, or
like our generation.
Generation, that's the word. You know, you read too many books when you confuse generation with genre. It's just our genre.
It's just our genre.
I'm in my millennial genre.
Yeah.
What genre are you? A millennial.
Oh, skinny jeans. Like all the way.
That being said, I thought I was like, I am ride or die for my skinny jeans. I can't wear them now.
Oh, honestly, like I went out and bought some baggy pants and I love them.
Yeah, I've gotten into like flare again.
Yeah.
I can do that.
We are literally the age now where the fashion is cycling back around to when we were kids. And it was like, or like teenagers.
Yeah, I'm like, why, like every other person, why did I throw out anything?
And you know what? Remember those like wide flares what are they called? Bell bottoms?
Bell bottoms.
That we used to wear?
Uh-huh.
I remember my mom saying, that was what was in style when I was in school. And then I was like, yeah, whatever, Mom. And now it's happening
Didn't you literally
again.
have your mom's pants in high school?
I did. She kept them and they were in style. So I wore them.
Yeah. And you could, well, I guess, I don't know if your son would want to wear them, but like if you had kept them.
But maybe he will. I don't know. Actually, I have no idea where those are. They're probably at my mom's house again.
Again?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. It's like full cycle.
And I mean, like, I'm sure books are going through similar trends. I just feel like I haven't been in it as long.
So remember when we were talking about in the romance episode, when we were talking about the bodice rippers?
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Like that's dark romance.
Yeah.
Because like there are bodice rippers. And I remember there was this one, and I think I might have brought it up. Like it's called Whitney, My Love. And I feel like that is almost kind of dark romance because like he is almost straight up physically abusive. I haven't read it in so long that like I might be misspeaking here, but pretty sure she gets slapped like hard and like in anger too. Like it's not like a hot thing. And I remember being so shocked by that when I was reading it. And I feel like right now that's kind of like the blurred lines right now seems to be trendy. And I'm kind of like, these bodice rippers like from back then, like, oh, okay, so funny little tidbit relating completely to what I'm talking about.
I'm not going on a tangent at all.
In the Cressley Cole After Dark group, I guess it was revealed that the first, well, I think it's technically the second book in the IAD series. I always thought it was the first one though. She felt bad about it because of the
dynamics.
The dynamics. Like I don't want to give anything away. And that is super in now. So now she's like, oh, I'm so glad. I feel like I don't have to apologize for that book now, maybe. Because like
she was ahead of her time.
She was ahead of her time.
She was behind her time and ahead of her time at the same time.
At the same time. She like teleported and like wrote it. But I was like, oh man. And so it's actually getting a new cover to like update it because it has
a cutesy one.
I don't know if it's cutesy, but yeah, like compared to the original one, like absolutely, it totally is. And I'm like, oh man, like I so badly want people to just be like raving about her on TikTok because she deserves it. And I just feel like, come on, people, like this is one of those ones like that you will like,
Yeah, I promise you, just read it.
Yeah, exactly. A Hunger Like No Other, it's called, for those of you wondering. A Hunger Like No Other by Cressley Cole.
And I think that the first 3 books, or maybe more, are now free on Kindle Unlimited. I don't think the whole collection is, but I think the first few ones, because I downloaded that specific one.
Okay, yeah. So I thought that was the first book in the series, but it's not. There's a novella that precedes it. And each book reads like a standalone novel. So you can start at any point in the series. And so that's cool, right? Because
that is nice.
Yeah.
Especially with such a big series too.
And
if you're like trying to collect them or something, you can just read them as you get them.
It's honestly, I think so. I just feel like you have to be so talented to do that. Like it's all connected, but each book can be read as a standalone. That's so cool.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a couple like that you've recommended.
That ones that can be read as a standalone?
But are a series, like the Molly Harper ones.
Oh yeah, like that's right. Yeah, you can totally. In fact, I'm pretty sure, like I haven't read all of her books. I've read quite a few of them. But definitely like some of those, I jumped in and I was like, oh, I can tell that this is part of a series and that I'm in the middle. But it wasn't necessary in order for me to enjoy the story. And all it did was make me want to go and read it from the beginning. Because I was like, this is awesome. I love this.
Yeah. I need to read more of hers. I read the Selkie one.
Yeah.
Because I was last summer I was reading a bunch of books about mermaids. I just wanted all the books about mermaids.
Yes.
Selkies are not mermaids, but
you should try driving Mr. Dead, I think is what it's called.
That doesn't sound anything like it has to do with mermaids.
No, it's not. No, sorry, it's a vampire.
Oh.
It's not at all a mermaid. It's so not what you were asking for just now. But it's really good.
Is it by Molly Harper?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yes, I did say
about mermaids, and I just go off the rails into freaking vampires, which is not at all what you asked for.
I mean, I did say that I wanted to read more Molly Harper books. Or at least that's where I was going with what I was saying, if I didn't actually get to that point.
Oh my gosh. So you can't go wrong, really. They're all really amusing and they're kind of cute.
They are so cute. At least the one I read, it was super cutesy. Had a lot of modern references to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of pop culture in there. And actually Cressley Cole does that too. Her stuff is not cute, but it has a lot of pop culture, very, I really like the female protagonists in her books too. And she has range. They're not all the same. So it's pretty cool.
That's nice. Especially if you're getting into a series that's so big, to read the same character over and over. I think would never. People would just lose interest.
Different. They're all so different. Oh man, there's one story that's been on my mind that I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the characters. And I've been wanting to reread it so bad recently. Yeah.
It's on social media, you see a lot of people will be like, oh, what was that book that you read? What was it about? And they're like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, you call yourself a reader and you don't remember anything. It's I remember the way it made me feel.
Yeah. But that's the same with people, isn't it?
Yeah.
You might not remember their name or what they did specifically, but you'll remember how they made you feel. There's my little deep thought for the day.
Deep thought of the day.
Yeah.
I feel like we went so off topic. But
yes, we did. Wow.
All for good reasons.
But the Molly Harper books, a lot of them are set in small towns.
Oh, so we were right on topic.
We were on topic, a very large
whole
majority
time
of them. Yes.
You went off topic, not us.
Yeah.
No, so if you like to read books, you should read small town settings because they are wonderful. That's my takeaway.
I haven't come across one I hated.
No, I've always enjoyed them for one reason or another.
Yeah, exactly.
They're very entertaining.
They are. Yeah.
It's a good setting.
'Tis. Well, I think that's all we had for you today. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.